Chris Paul is speed walking to the Riverwalk, who was cut earlier tonight by the Warriors, intends to sign a one-year deal with the San Antonio Spurs. That's according to Bleacher Report. Paul played mostly in a reserve role with Golden State last season with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Still in the fold, Paul, third on the NBA's career assist list, brings veteran leadership to a young Spurs squad led by Rookie of the Year Victor Wembanyama. Also the fact that they just drafted Stephon Castle out of UConn with their first-round pick, so CP3 can show him how to play point guard in the NBA. All right, back here with Chris Walker and CBS Sports NBA insider Bill Ryder. CP3 to the Spurs seems like a nice fit, right, Bill?
I like it. Let's give some credit to Mark Stein, who reported this over the last few days as a possibility, and then a couple hours ago. Yeah, I mean, we talked about there wasn't going to be a robust market. It had to be the right kind of locker room, and you just noted the reasons. Young point guard coming in, CP3 can mentor, and obviously the Spurs have, I think, understandably massive expectations and high hopes for Victor Wembanyama. And so who better to teach you how to be a pro and go about being a pro than Chris Paul? And the Spurs aren't looking to win a championship this year, but they are looking to win more games and have the games feel like they matter and have that be part of Wemby's development. And Chris Paul is a person that can come in, can play. Again, the goal is to win 42 games instead of 62 and to push for the play-in rather than push for a championship. This is a really nice fit from a basketball perspective and certainly from a mentoring perspective.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this pick is much about, I mean, this trade or them picking up Chris Paul, shall I say, is more about them trying to get some veteran leadership in the locker room.
Sure.
Right? You know, the point guard last year, Jeremy Sohan, I'm like, okay, guys, what are y'all doing? Like, he shouldn't be playing PG. But, again, played well down the stretch and had some great games, some great highlights playing with Victor Wembanyama. But Chris Paul, and Bill mentioned this earlier, he's a apex leader in the locker room.
Sure.
Right? And you need, Pop can do whatever he wants about these young players. You just got Stephon Castle in. You need that coach on the floor. And I would even say that Chris Paul, they didn't bring him in as much to play and be dominant, is more to be a coach on the floor and a coach in the locker room. Let's try to see if we can unite these young guys. Let's see if I can, you know, impart my wisdom on some of the guys and help Victor Wembanyama. Because this is, as Bill says, this is for the future. You're bringing in Chris Paul, $11 million. Let's get some veteran experience. Got a bunch of young, good players. And, you know, we'll see what happens. But we need more of a coach on the floor, but more importantly, a coach in the locker room. And Pop's, you know, Pop's back. He's getting up there in age, too. So let's get another guy in there, because Chris Paul, to me, is one of those guys I think will be a coach one day. And I think this will be a stepping stone in the right direction.
It'll be another Hall of Famer, right, for the Spurs.
No doubt.
Right? I mean, you bring in these veteran guys, and obviously those guys were homegrown. Chris Paul not coming in here on a one-year deal, but makes a lot of sense when you got Steph Castle try to teach him how to be a point guard. Speaking of point guards, Cade Cunningham, not a free agent, but signing a massive deal. He's going to sign a max rookie extension, 5 years, worth $226 million. Remember, he was taken #1 overall in 2021, averaged 20 points, 6.5 assists over his first 3 seasons. Ryder and Chris Walker. Bill, what's the market for a 39-year-old veteran like Chris Paul?
There isn't much of one. Look, $30 million's a lot, but that is part of the reason that the Warriors made the decision that they just made. They were looking to make a trade. Nobody was interested in that number. And so I think you just hit the nail on the head, Akeem. The question becomes, and I think the answer is yes, does Chris Paul prioritize at the end of his career, at the very end, trying to get a ring? And I'm told to expect that the Lakers will be in the mix if, as expected, Chris Paul is willing to take the veterans minimum, that the Phoenix Suns could be in the mix, a return to Phoenix, a team that is absolutely bereft of any kind of talent outside of their so-called big three. It's really a big two and Bradley Beal. I don't think there will be a huge market, and I think it's unlikely, although we'll see, that Chris Paul will take a little bit more to play in a place like, say, Detroit, that has a lot of cap space but very little offer. I think he's going to chase a championship. He's going to chase his legacy, and I think that means there's a very good chance he'll go to a place like the Lakers or the Suns where he would be welcomed with open arms if, as expected, he's willing to take a massive pay cut from what he's made over most of his career.
So it looks like we're... So now Bill's agreeing with me on the Lakers. Why you want to give us Chris Paul, Bill?
No,
Come on, man. Listen, I'll say this. Listen, I love Chris Paul. He's one of my favorite players of all time. And when the Warriors got him last year, I'm like, oh, come on, guys. Like, you know, again, it was similar to when the Lakers took the picture and they said, look at all the Hall of Famers. I'm like, yo, all these guys are like 95 years old. You're not going to win with those guys. And Chris Paul, again, though a superstar in his heyday, often injured, it's just time. It's like the boxer that won't stop boxing.
You're telling him to retire?
I'm not telling him to retire,
okay,
but definitely take the exception, the
Right.
middle of exception, and try to win a ring
Right.
and play for your legacy. You've made plenty of money. Again, it's hard to tell guys to, hey, listen, I'm gonna take a pay cut when they can make money. But as Bill says, there's no market for him. And let's just be honest. You know, he's been great for the league. It's now put yourself in a situation. It ain't Phoenix, that's for sure, to win a ring, because we don't know how long Durant's going to be there. I know Bill may know about that, but the bottom line is the best place is the Lakers. Your buddy's there. You're not going to be relied on heavily, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can mentor his son when he's over there.
Is that the only contending team that would make sense? The Lakers.
Why would anybody sign a 39-year-old point guard?
Is that the only team that you would make sense for Chris Paul to go to, the LA Lakers?
I think that it would, again, you're talking about some veteran leadership,
Yep.
not putting him in a situation.
Like, what about going back to Oklahoma City?
For what?
To be the veteran leadership there. That team was the youngest in the NBA.
I don't think and guess what they did as the youngest team? They were the #1 seed.
But they didn't show up when the spotlight was the biggest.
True.
They didn't make buckets when they needed to. You saw what happened.
Again.
So Chris Paul, I'm just saying,
if
if you're talking about veteran, I get it.
They lost to.
I get it, but I'm saying, if you're talking about veteran leadership, why not go back where it started, right?
Listen, I'll say it again. Again, you're talking to a Laker fan, okay?
I know you. I'm with you. I'm just trying to give some options here.
I'm not saying that OKC does not want Chris Paul. They tried with Gordon Hayward, didn't work. Now they're bringing in Ellis Caruso. Again, Chris Paul, I think, will be a good fit. Swan song, stay in L.A. He played with the Clippers, and now you may have a chance. Chris, listen to me. No more State Farm commercials. Bottom line is, I don't want to call you Cliff anymore. Go to the Lakers, play with LeBron. Bill, how you like that? Come on, man. Like, give my Lakers some love, because off air, you're hating on them. So don't do that on air. Off air, you're hating on the Lakers, but come on now.
Chris,
give us some love.
They are historically, outside of the COVID year, a remarkably consistent play-in team of mediocrity. So I'm like, I still think they're right in that mix.
Western Conference Finals.
And the West is, they made the conference finals run, which is extraordinary, and they obviously got swept by Denver and weren't at the same level, and that was amazing to watch. If you had LeBron, I think even now turns 40 in December, you have a chance. But I agree with you. I think the Lakers make the most sense for Chris Paul. He wants to be in Los Angeles. It's where his family wants to be. LeBron James and he aren't just friends. I mean, they'll tell you they're like brothers. They're godfathers to each other's kids. And there's always a belief for people that believe in LeBron James that you can win a championship if you play with him. And I know that Chris Paul still believes that. So again, if they can make the numbers work, and the Lakers don't have a lot of flexibility, so maybe getting a bit of a discount because Chris wants to play with his buddy LeBron James absolutely makes sense. You asked Hakeem other places that might fit. The Sixers would if Daryl Morey didn't run that organization, but I don't think that reunion is going to happen. They don't, right? It isn't Dallas. There aren't a lot of places that I think Chris Paul makes sense. And I'll throw into your Oklahoma City question, Hakeem. Sam Presti is really jealously guarding that locker room. And he really wants it to be this core group of young players with SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as the leader, growing together. And they feel like talking to people in the organization that bring in Gordon Hayward, who's not a bad guy. It just didn't fit with the culture that they were building. Chris Paul is a very divisive figure when it comes to leadership. At some teams, he's been an extraordinary leader. And Chris, I know you like the guy, but I'm telling you from sources, at some places it's been problematic. It just depends on. Chris is an alpha's alpha who's very dogmatic about how things should go. So I think he's a great mentor in certain spots. I don't think it's Oklahoma City, and I think you guys are right. I think it's a very narrow pool of teams that make sense. I'll put Phoenix out there again if that's a place he wanted to return to, but I think the Lakers are the team that probably have the best odds of landing CP3.
Wouldn't that be wild if you went to the Lakers? Because you remember 13 years ago, David Stern nullified the trade, right?
Yeah,
wouldn't that be a full circle moment?
Too late.
It is too late.
But we don't want this Chris Paul.
But wouldn't that be wild though? If 13 years later, he finally gets traded to the Lakers.
13 years later, finally gets traded to the Lakers. They go to the championship
and wins a title.
And you
want to write your storybooks.
And there you go. Listen, and Bill makes a great point about the locker room. He can't tank that locker room. And you're right. He's a divisive player, but at 39, not the same player. But we give him all the love and adulation of being that player. But in that locker room, I think it would be in check. He would get in where he fit in. They tried it with Melo. It didn't work. Now we're at friend number 2. We'll see what happens with Chris Paul. I just believe that it will be a good fit. And, again, this is a swan song. When they're talking legacy, LeBron's talking legacy now, Bill. He's talking legacy. Who can get me there? And every player counts. Going to Philly makes 0 sense. Going to Phoenix makes 0 sense. The only place to go is L.A.
The Banana Boat buddies would rejoin, right? Right? You remember that? The Banana Boat?
Oh,
grainy,
definitely remember
grainy
it.
picture.
Saved him.
I had to cover it. I remember it.
That would be quite the scene if we brought that back from the archives. Chris Paul, certainly a Hall of Famer. Look where he ranks among assists in NBA history, third all time in front of his friend LeBron James.